I've always believed that life has a way of revealing the truth when we least expect it. Sometimes it's loud and violent, sometimes it's quiet, like a whisper brushing the back of your neck. And honestly, I've had moments in my own life where I thought everything was fine, only to realize later that I had been walking toward a cliff the whole time. Maybe that's why Lucas Park's story hit me so hard. Because it reminded me of how fragile trust really is, how fast everything we build can crumble. Lucas wasn't the type of man who expected surprises, especially not the kind that break you. He lived in patterns, clean, predictable routines that gave him a sense of control. At 34, he had everything people say you should have by that age: a stable career, a comfortable home, and a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. If anyone saw him walking down the street, they'd think he was one of those lucky ones, someone who had figured life out early. But that's the thing. You never really know what someone is going through, not behind closed doors. Lucas grew up in Busan, moved to Seoul for university, and built a tech startup with his closest friend, Jun Han. Their friendship began during freshman year when they were both broke, ambitious, and convinced they could change the world with a laptop and too much caffeine. And for years, they did stick together, late nights, coding marathons, failures, wins, and everything in between. When the startup finally took off, they celebrated like brothers. That's what made everything later so cruel. Because betrayal doesn't hurt unless it comes from someone who once had your trust. Lucas married Mina Co 5 years ago. She was bright, warm, and effortlessly social, the kind of woman who made strangers feel like old friends. They met at a small cafe near Hongdae, and Lucas fell for her almost embarrassingly fast. A month later, he introduced her to June, and the three became inseparable. Dinners, game nights, weekend trips. Lucas thought he was building a family, two people he trusted more than anyone standing beside him. If he had paid more attention back then, maybe he would have caught the signs. But love makes you blind, and loyalty makes you deaf. The trouble didn't start suddenly. In fact, it began quietly, in the little moments people dismiss. A late text. A strange tone. A joke that felt too personal. But Lucas trusted them both so deeply that he brushed every red flag aside. I can't judge him. I've done the same. We all have, at least once. A few months before everything collapsed, the dynamic among the three of them shifted in ways Lucas didn't fully understand. Mina became more distant, more guarded with her phone, more tired at the end of each day. And June, he grew warmer toward her. Too warm. He'd make inside jokes Lucas didn't recognize, comment on details only someone paying very close attention would notice, her new perfume, the way she styled her hair differently, the songs she'd been listening to lately. Lucas wasn't jealous by nature. He always thought that if you love someone, you give them space to breathe. But even someone like him couldn't ignore the growing tension. I've felt that tension before, the kind that creeps into your mind late at night, making you doubt things you never questioned. And Lucas felt it too, though he tried his best to bury it. The truth began to surface during a business trip to Tokyo. It was supposed to be a simple 2-day trip to meet with potential investors. Lucas loved traveling for work, it made him feel purposeful, useful. And whenever he returned home, Mina would greet him at the door like he'd been gone a year instead of 48 hours. But this time was different. On the first night, Lucas called her, and she didn't answer. Then he called again. And again. Mina finally texted him nearly an hour later, saying she had fallen asleep early because of a migraine. He believed her, but something about the message felt clipped. Cold. Like she was choosing her words too carefully. The next morning, he sent her a voice message, just to hear her reply. She didn't send one back. Instead, she typed, "Busy morning. I'll call you later." He tried to shrug it off, but even he felt the shift. When someone you love talks to you differently, you notice, even if you pretend you don't. I remember once when someone I cared about changed the tone of their messages, and my stomach knew something was wrong long before my mind caught up. Lucas was going through the same thing, though he didn't want to admit it. During lunch with the investors, Lucas checked his phone more times than he should have. There were no new messages. Mina's silence lingered in the back of his mind, bitter and heavy. He tried to shake it off, reminding himself she wasn't the kind of person to hide things. But people change when you least expect it. That evening, Lucas received an email saying the second day of meetings had been cancelled due to a sudden scheduling conflict. He sighed, frustrated but also relieved. Travel wore him out emotionally more than he liked to admit. So he decided to return home early and surprise Mina. He thought she'd be delighted. He even imagined the little smile she usually gave him when she wasn't expecting him, one that always made him forget how exhausting life could be. That image would haunt him later. Lucas caught an early night flight back to Seoul. Rain hammered against the windows as the plane descended, turning the city lights into smeared streaks of gold. It was almost midnight by the time he reached his neighborhood, dragging his luggage behind him through the damp, cool air. The streets were quiet. The kind of quiet that feels thick and heavy, like the world is holding its breath. He walked up the steps to his house, noticing something strange right away. The living room lights were on. Mina never left them on that late. As he slid his key into the lock, a chill prickled the back of his neck. "I've felt that sensation before, like your body knows the truth before your mind does." Lucas stepped inside, closed the door gently, and whispered her name. "Mina." No answer. The house was too clean, too orderly, but not untouched. A pair of wine glasses sat on the coffee table. The empty bottle of red they had been saving for a special occasion was open beside them. 2 glasses. Not one. He frowned, confused at first. Maybe she had company. Maybe her cousin had visited. A friend? But none of those explanations sat right with him. The air felt wrong. Then something else caught his eye, June's leather jacket tossed carelessly over the back of the sofa. His throat tightened. At first, he tried to rationalize it. Maybe June had come over to discuss something urgent about the company. Maybe they had been preparing a surprise for him. Maybe this wasn't what it looked like. He clung to those thoughts like a drowning man clinging to driftwood. But deep down, he felt the truth. And it made his chest ache. Lucas moved slowly through the hallway, every step heavy. The faint sound of movement drifted from upstairs. A soft thud. A breathy laugh. Not Mina's, at least not the kind he was used to hearing. His pulse hammered in his ears. He took the stairs one by one, his hand gripping the railing so tightly his knuckles went white. As he reached the second floor, his heart felt like it was splitting open. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Light spilled into the hallway in a thin, accusing line. "Mina," he whispered again, though he wasn't sure why. Maybe he prayed she'd hear him and stop whatever was happening. Maybe he hoped he was wrong. But he wasn't. He pushed the door gently, and it creaked open just enough for him to see everything he wished he could unsee. There they were, Mina and June, entangled in the bed he had shared with her for 5 years. For a moment, Lucas froze. Pain bloomed in his chest so violently he wondered if he might collapse. Time didn't slow down, it stopped entirely. The world narrowed to a single point of devastation. He stood there, caught between disbelief and heartbreak. His body trembled. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He felt like a stranger in his own life, watching it crumble in front of him. Mina gasped when she finally noticed him, scrambling to pull the sheets over herself. Her eyes widened in horror. June sat up too, panic washing across his face. "Lucas, wait, listen," June stammered. But Lucas didn't. Couldn't. He stepped back, gripping the doorframe for balance. Every memory he had with the two of them flickered in his mind like dying lights, every laugh, every shared meal, every promise. All of it meant nothing now. "I've always believed betrayal is a kind of death. And in that moment, a part of Lucas truly died. His voice finally returned, raw and cracked. How long? Mina shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. Lucas, please, let me explain. How long? June swallowed hard. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Those words struck Lucas harder than a punch. He backed away, shaking his head as if that would undo the scene. But nothing could. The truth was carved into him now. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the room. Mina cried after him. June called his name. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. As Lucas stumbled down the staircase, gripping the railing, one overwhelming thought echoed in his mind. He had been betrayed by the only two people he ever fully trusted. And nothing would ever be the same again. The house felt colder as he reached the front door. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed to leave before the pain consumed him. He stepped into the rain, letting it soak his face. It didn't wash anything away. Because some wounds don't rinse off. They stay, deep and permanent. Maybe that's why his story matters, because anyone who has ever trusted the wrong people knows exactly what that silence feels like. Exactly what that darkness becomes. And this was only the beginning. Rain soaked Lucas's clothes as he walked aimlessly through the empty streets, but he barely felt it. His mind was trapped in the moment he opened that bedroom door, replaying it over and over until it felt like torture. Sometimes when people talk about heartbreak, they make it sound poetic. But in reality, it's brutal. It's physical. It hits the body before the mind. I've felt that before, those seconds where you can't breathe, where your chest feels like it's folding inward. That was the state Lucas wandered in. He eventually stopped at a small bench near a closed convenience store. The fluorescent sign buzzed weakly overhead, flickering like it couldn't decide whether to die or keep fighting. He sat there, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. And for the first time in years, Lucas cried. Not the quiet kind. The kind that rips through you because you held everything in for too long. The rain washed over him, running down his forehead and mixing with the tears until he couldn't tell them apart. People think crying makes you weak, but honestly, it's one of the strongest things a person can do when the world collapses. Lucas didn't know that yet, but he would. After nearly an hour, when the storm finally eased, he stood up and forced himself to think. Running into the night wasn't enough. He needed answers. Not because he wanted reconciliation, he knew deep inside that nothing could undo what he saw, but because he needed to understand how it all had happened behind his back. How the two people he loved most found their way to each other in the dark. He made his way to a cheap hotel, booked a small room with shaky hands, and collapsed on the bed without changing his clothes. He just lay there, staring at the ceiling, letting the cold numbness settle in. He barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same image. Mina's face twisted in shock. June's hand reaching out as if that could undo years of damage. The sheets tangled around their bodies. By dawn, Lucas had made a decision. He wasn't going home. Not yet. If Mina wanted to explain, she could. But it wouldn't happen inside the house he built for them. A house that no longer felt like his. He sent her a message, short and sharp. We talk tomorrow. Alone. Don't contact me before then. She replied instantly, flooding him with apologies, begging him to come home, insisting it was all a mistake. Lucas stared at the messages but didn't respond. Part of him wanted to scream back. Another part wanted to erase everything. But the largest part felt empty. June didn't message him at all. And somehow, that silence hurt in a different way. The absence of guilt is a confession in itself. That next morning, Lucas left the hotel, grabbed a coffee he didn't drink, and walked through the city like a ghost. He went to the company office, even though it was the last place he wanted to be. But he needed clarity. And sometimes, facing the things that hurt is the only way to stop running from them. When he entered the office, the receptionist smiled at him like everything was normal, and that alone almost broke him again. Because nothing was normal. Not anymore. He walked straight to his private office, shut the door behind him, and sat down at his desk. The room still felt like his safe space, but even here, the betrayal crawled into his thoughts. Minutes later, June stepped inside without knocking. Lucas didn't even look up at first. He didn't have the energy to yell, and yelling wouldn't fix anything anyway. June closed the door behind him. "Lucas, please. Let me explain." Lucas finally raised his eyes, and the look he gave June made the other man flinch. "How long?" Lucas asked again, the same question from the night before, but colder now. June scrubbed a hand over his face and sat down, defeated. 6 months. Lucas felt something inside him shatter. Not like glass this time, more like bone. 6 months, Lucas repeated, his voice flat. 6 months while you worked beside me every day. 6 months while you ate dinner with us. 6 months while you called me your brother. "I didn't mean for it to happen," June whispered. "You didn't mean for it to happen." Lucas leaned forward, fury simmering just under the surface. "You meant it enough to continue for half a year." June's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "I was jealous. I've always been jealous. You had everything. The career. The confidence. And Mina," his voice cracked. "She was lonely, Lucas. You barely noticed." That sentence sliced through Lucas differently, not just because of the audacity, but because there was a small, painful truth buried inside it. He had been absent lately. The startup had consumed him. He had been stressed, exhausted, distracted. But none of that justified betrayal. "You saw a weakness," Lucas said quietly. "And instead of helping us, you took advantage of it." June didn't deny it. Lucas stood up slowly, walking toward the window. The city looked distant, almost unreal. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "I want you out of the company," he said at last. "Effective today." June's head snapped up. "Lucas, please. The company is half mine." "It won't be after today," Lucas cut in. "I'll have the lawyers handle the details. You'll be compensated fairly. But you're done here. I can't work beside someone I can't even look at." June stood, anger flashing across his face. "You can't erase me like that." "I already have," Lucas replied. And with that, June walked out, slamming the door behind him. Lucas didn't flinch. He just stared out the window until the reflection of his own face blurred. Later that afternoon, Mina showed up at the hotel lobby. Lucas hadn't told her where he was, but she knew him well enough to guess. She approached him with swollen eyes, trembling hands, and a kind of desperation that might have moved him months ago, but now only made his heart ache in a different way. "Lucas, please. Talk to me." He followed her to a quiet corner of the lobby. She sat down, wiping her face, and began to speak quickly, as if she feared she'd run out of time. "I never wanted this. I swear. It started when you kept working late. I felt invisible. And June was there. He listened. He understood how lonely I was. I didn't mean for it to become physical. It just happened once, and then I regretted it, but you continued," Lucas said. "For 6 months. She cried harder. "I thought I could handle it. I thought it would stop." "You thought the affair would stop?" he asked, voice trembling with disbelief. "Or you thought you could keep hiding it?" Mina covered her face with her hands. "I'm so sorry, Lucas. I was lost." Lucas didn't speak for a long moment. He studied her, the woman he had loved so fiercely, the woman he thought he'd grow old with. She looked small now. Fragile. But her fragility didn't erase the damage she had done. "I would have forgiven you," Lucas said quietly. "If you had told me the truth the first time. If you had confessed instead of continuing it in secret. But you didn't. You let it go on for months while I trusted you both." Mina sobbed. I know I ruined everything. But I still love you." "Do you?" Lucas asked. "Or did you just love the idea of someone paying attention to you when I was busy?" That question made her freeze. She opened her mouth but no words came out. Lucas stood up slowly. "I'm done, Mina. I can't stay in a marriage built on lies." She reached for his hand, but he stepped back. And that small movement, the distance he put between them, shattered her completely. Over the next few weeks, Lucas moved to a small apartment across town. The divorce process started. Friends reached out in shock, some taking his side, others staying awkwardly neutral. People love drama until the consequences become real. Then they step back as if heartbreak is contagious. Lucas worked with lawyers to buy out June's share of the company. It took time, money, and countless tense negotiations, but eventually, June signed the documents. Lucas watched him walk away from the office building for the last time without looking back. As for Mina, she tried to contact him repeatedly. Long texts. Voicemails. Apologies. Please. But Lucas didn't respond. He needed space to heal. Needed time to understand who he was without the two people he had once anchored his world to. Healing isn't linear. Some days Lucas woke up feeling strong. Other days, he spiraled. He'd replay conversations in his head, wondering what he missed, what signals he ignored. I've been there too, the self-blame phase. The phase where you think if you had just done something differently, maybe things wouldn't have fallen apart. But the truth is, no one deserves betrayal. Not Lucas. Not anyone. He started going to therapy, something he once thought he would never need. But talking helped. Understanding helped. Accepting that Mina's choices weren't his fault helped. Life, slowly, began to stitch itself back together. Months passed. One evening, Lucas went back to the cafe where he had first met Mina. Not because he wanted to rekindle anything, but because he wanted closure. The place looked exactly the same, soft lights, quiet chatter, the smell of roasted beans drifting through the air. He sat by the window, sipping a drink, lost in thought. That was when Mina walked in. She froze when she saw him, hesitation flickering across her face before she approached. "Lucas," she whispered. He nodded, calm now. Time had softened the sharpest edges of his pain. They sat together, not as lovers, not even as friends, just two people who had once shared a life. "I wanted to tell you something," Mina said quietly. "Not to change your mind. Just so you know." Lucas waited. "I'm pregnant," she said, voice breaking. "And it isn't yours." The air left Lucas's chest in a heavy exhale, but he didn't break this time. He simply processed the information slowly, the way someone examines a wound that is no longer bleeding but still tender. He nodded. "I hope the child is healthy," he said softly. Mina cried silently. "I'm sorry, Lucas. For everything." "I know," he replied. "And I hope you find peace." Truly. For the first time, he meant it. They parted with no promises, no tension, just acceptance. When Lucas stepped outside, he felt something shift inside him. Not triumph. Not relief. But closure. The kind that comes when a long chapter finally reaches its last page. And for the first time since that night he returned home early, Lucas felt like he could breathe again. Not the shallow breaths of survival, but the deep breaths of someone who knows life isn't over. It's just changing. And sometimes, that's enough. I think stories like Lucas's matter because they remind us that betrayal isn't the end. It feels like it in the moment, but one day you wake up and realize the world hasn't stopped. You're still here. You're still standing. And maybe, just maybe, you're stronger than you were before. Thank you for staying with me through this entire story. I know it was heavy, emotional, and maybe even uncomfortable at times, but life is full of moments like these, moments that shape us, break us, and rebuild us. And I truly believe that hearing stories like Lucas's helps us understand our own choices, our own pain, and the strength we don't always realize we have. If you've ever been through something similar, or if this story made you reflect on anything in your own life, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I always read them, and I appreciate every person who takes the time to listen all the way to the end. And if you enjoy deep, emotional, human stories like this one, stories about betrayal, redemption, love, loss, and everything in between, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps more than you know, and it lets me keep bringing you powerful stories week after week. Thank you again for being here. I'll see you in the next story.